Welcome back for those of you who've been along so far this week. I'm going to pop this down so we don't get any more feedback on that. But welcome back to those of you who've been along this week. It's great to have you back here. For those of you who are new here this evening, welcome for the first time. What we're doing is this week we're interviewing a whole variety of people and seeing the impact that Jesus has really had on their lives, because we want to show you that Jesus is for you, not against you, and he's for you no matter what kind of backgrounds you have. And so it's a great privilege to be able to kind of chat with some people and find out about what's been going on. And tonight, obviously, we have the legendary Warren Ace Furman here, and it's going to be great just to find out a bit more about Warren. So, Warren, let's start at the beginning, as you've got to always start that way. Where were you born and where were you raised?
So, as much as I've got an Essex accent, I was actually born in Doncaster, so I'm a Yorkshireman.
Oh, wow.
I'm a sellout, I know. But we moved to Essex when we were young. So my dad was a roof tiler.
Right.
And there weren't a lot of work in Doncaster. So when me and my brothers were young, we all moved up to Essex. So I didn't get the northern accent, which I'm quite pleased about. I don't know why. But
I think the speaker here a couple of years ago was from Yorkshire, and he basically loves to talk about Jesus and Yorkshire. It's always the two go together. But whereabouts in Essex, where are you raised?
So I grew up in a place called Harlow.
Right.
Which is, anyone know Harlow? Yeah,
a few people.
A town of roundabouts.
Right.
Yeah, a new town. It was a bit of a project, I think.
Right, and Harlow, town of roundabouts, and some people know about it, but for others, they're trying to get their bearings. My wife's from Essex as well. She's from the mighty Wickford, near Bas Vegas.
Yeah.
Is Harlow more kind of Bas Vegas, Basildon area, or is it more kind of your Tiptree and Chelmsford?
It's near Stansted.
Yeah.
So down the M11, it's just,
It's a bit of different location.
But good for work, because my dad was a roof tiler, so plenty of work in London.
Yeah.
But you know, my dad was he was like proper old school. And me and I was one of 5 brothers growing up, so he was like, you will all be roof tilers.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't like the look of that, you know, because it was hard work to start with. But also growing up, it was a bit grim, to be honest, because he was self-employed, so if it rained, we had no money coming in. My mum was obviously busy looking after us, so we didn't grow up in poverty, but we grew up sort of pretty poor.
Yeah. So finishing kind of school then, I guess you weren't looking forward to that kind of role. Did you kind of say you didn't want to do it? Because there was something that happened, wasn't it, at age kind of 16 from your dad, that kind of left you kind of going, oh, this is changing my future slightly.
Well, I think one of the big key things growing up was my little brother died. And when that happened, Mum and Dad were a bit like, and I think this just set something going in my mind, because Mum used to say to me, good night, God bless. And then suddenly she stopped saying God bless, and I was like, what happened to God? And she said, there is no God. If there was a God, your brother wouldn't have died. Wow. So that made perfect sense to me. So, you know, it was a bit like, I sort of started to look at the world thinking, okay, what's it all about? I don't want to be a roofer. I was like, out of all my brothers, I was like a real skinny kid.
Right.
So trying to carry tiles up on my shoulder and falling through the roof and all that, I just really didn't want to do that. And I grew up in a celebrity culture, a bit like it is now. You know, you've got The Rock now, haven't you? And people like that people aspire to. And for me, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah. Sylvester Stallone?
Yeah, anyone remember them guys? Yeah. So I was just, the fire brigade just walked out. I could see a load of people in high vis. The lights are very bright here.
Yeah, you can't really see.
It's not the fire. No, there's no fire. Okay. It's smoky and... So it became difficult with my dad, because he was like, you'll all be roofers. He said, skills pay the bills. Right. Dirty hands means clean money. Right. He said, anything that consumes without producing will fail. And like I say, I started putting my faith in Schwarzenegger, highest paid movie star in history. Yeah. And, you know, as far as I could see, he was just sort of saying, I'll be back and lifting weights and making all this money. Yeah. So I was like, I want to be like that guy. So my dad, he looked at my school reports. They weren't any good. I had ADD, attention deficit disorder. It wasn't diagnosed then. So I struggled at school. So he was like, if you don't have a job by the time you leave school, I'm going to kick you out. I'm not going to enable this delusion that you're thinking that you're going to be a movie star.
Right.
And I think what didn't help me with that, Martin, is back then, like my brothers had posters on their wall of like Kylie Minogue or Madonna. Yeah. And then he'd come into my room and it was like pictures of blokes in pants, oiled up. And
Was Conan the Barbarian, was that one of them?
Yeah, Conan was there, yeah, but my dad was like, what's all this about? And I was like, he's a very traditional man, you know. So he did what he said he would. He kicked me out. He said, I've told you, anything that consumes without producing will fail, and you're just drinking all the milk, eating all the chicken, and you're not producing anything. Your brothers are out working, so out you go. And he kicked me out. So, I was homeless really from a young age. And if you lived in Harlow then and you were homeless, and you went to the authorities, they sent you to the YWCA, the Young Women's Christian Association. And that's only because there's no YMCA there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I didn't choose that.
Yeah.
And so I started to think maybe my dad was right, actually, because I was now registered homeless. It was, you know, back when Thatcher was instilling this poll tax. I was being hooked for poll tax, even though I was homeless.
Oh, wow.
And I had no skills to pay the bills. My brothers were now working. And I also learned that there was no internet then, so you couldn't have seen this. But I learned after following Schwarzenegger and Stallone for a while that actually they were taking anabolic steroids, and you can't look like these movie stars, these big bodybuilders, without taking steroids.
So there's only so far you can get to in terms of the physique with all the workouts.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
then steroids are what needs to get you that extra kind of bulky muscles and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were working out and you were taking the steroids and stuff, but then one day you applied for Gladiators. And what kind of got you into applying for that? Why apply for Gladiators and not some other kind of...
Well, you're too young, Martin, but when I was growing up, there was just 3 channels on the TV. Can you believe that?
I kind of remember.
It was just 3 channels. And one of those channels had all the money. And because it was only London Weekend Television that were allowed product placement.
Right.
And so I'd come in, I'd have a few beers on a Saturday, and this show would be on, and it was the first reality TV show. It started in America, and Britain had bought the rights. And I watched that, and now I'm sort of at a place where, you know, I'd taken this risk of taking steroids. I knew that it was detrimental to my health. And I was like, I need to make some money out of this now. So I've got to do something. I can't carry on taking drugs. So I applied to be on the show. Again, this is probably before your time, but it wasn't send an email. We had to write a letter. We had to put pen on with a quill and some ink.
I used to write letters to Kenny Dalglish and things like that when I was a boy. So
and we put a stamp on the letter and put it in a postbox. And so I sent that to London Weekend Television.
Great. And what did you say in the letter? Because obviously it wasn't a blank letter. You must have said something or showed some pictures or something.
Yeah. So I was a shy, introverted sort of kid, but I knew that I'd have to be cheeky to get a foot in the door. And you know, and I don't think I applied for Gladiators because I wanted to be famous necessarily. I think I just wanted the wealth. You know, I just thought with fame comes fortune. You know, so. I sent in a really cheeky letter just saying, look, I've watched the Gladiators. I know that you write a letter in if you want to be a contestant, but actually I don't want to be a contestant. I want to be a gladiator, and actually I think I could beat up any of your gladiators with one arm tied behind my back.
Did you have any in particular in mind?
No, I knew I couldn't. But actually, you know, it's like, I say this to my son now. I'm trying to get him to get a job. It's very difficult. He's 20 years old, but I say, no, you've got to be pushy, you know, you've got to sell yourself.
Kind of cheeky Essex boy, kind of.
Exactly, but it worked. They were like, oh, okay, good luck with that, and invited me to a tryout.
Right, and how many, were there other people at the tryout, or was it just you? Yeah,
it was a horrible day. Right. So they invited me to Blackfriars in London to a gladiator tryout where there were 60 other blokes, all built like barn doors,
Were they all wearing spandex as well? Or
no, they were just bodybuilders, and they were like massive. And because at the time, if you became a gladiator, I remember Wolf when he was on Gladiators, he was like the most famous man in this country. Yeah. Everyone loved to hate the Wolf man, you know. So if you got this job, you could earn a lot of money, you know. You could become famous fast and rich fast. So everyone wanted this top job. So you had like professional top bodybuilders there and stuff. And I remember thinking, you know, I'm just some hobbit from Harlow, really, living, you know, homeless, living in a hostel, thinking I've got no chance here.
So how come you got through then? Because looking at the other 60 big beefcakes, how come you got through?
I think I had a little bit of a strategy, actually. So I read the newspapers and I saw that they sacked a guy called Shadow, Jefferson King, for taking steroids. It had now become, Gladiators had become a huge show, and lots of young people were looking at it. So the producers, Nigel Lithgow, Ken Warwick, they recognised that, okay, this is a platform, you know, families are watching it, we've got to make sure, we know these guys take steroids to look like this, but we're going to have to start doing something about it. So they brought in Olympic doping control so that you'd come off of the steroids, but Shadow apparently hadn't come off of the steroids.
Because he was huge. I always remember, because I was a geek, I remember all the stats. He was like 19 stone, 2 pounds, and 6'3".
Yeah, I think they always added a bit though.
They really? Was he actually 14 stone?
He was a big dude. There's no doubt about it. But I just knew that they were trying to get rid of drugs at this point. Yeah. I also knew that if you're going to get through and it's a family show, they're going to want controlled aggression. It's no good just going. And what I noticed is there's all these blokes come into fight loaded with testosterone. Yeah. It was a horrible atmosphere. You know, it was just like people trying to literally kill each other for this top job. Yeah. And it was very dog eat dog. And I remember thinking, maybe if I sort of fight but try and smile.
Yeah, because you were always kind of smiling on Gladiators, weren't you? You had Wolf, who was always angry looking, and then you were always smiling. So that helped in the...
Well, it did in that. Yeah. It didn't actually on the show. It went the other way. Right. Because people don't want a smiling Gladiator, you know what I mean? They want a mean Gladiator. Yeah. But in the tryout, it helped because, like I say, I smiled as I was hitting people with a stick. Very difficult to do when someone's hitting you with a stick. Like, it's like... and I'll tell you what, when you've got a 20-stone bloke hitting you over the head with one of them, they look soft, them Flintstone sticks, but they're not. When you get one of them over the head, even with that on, it really hurts. Right. You know? So, but I think that worked because I got the gig.
That's brilliant. So, and what happened next? They gave you the opportunity. You signed a contract. And what happened? So a big kind of limo or something came to pick you up. Is that right?
Yep. They sent a stretch Mercedes limousine to the YWCA in Harlow. And it picked me up and it took me to Heathrow Airport. I was like in the backyard.
Were you like strutting out there, or were you going to like head down, or what were you like?
I loved it. You know, I was like a kid in a sweet shop. I felt like I'd died and gone to heaven, you know, because it was like, whoa, this is incredible. This is the biggest show on television. It's franchised around the world, 16 million viewers regular every Saturday night, 10,000 people watching it live. Now all of a sudden they've sent a limousine to my little dorm, and it takes me to Heathrow Airport. And when I get there, there's a big scrum, a crowd around the Gladiators as they're trying to get through security and stuff. And like I meet Jet, and I'm completely starstruck, you know, and Lightning, and then Wolf is like, hello. I'm like, whoa, it's the Wolf Man. I was like, I just couldn't believe it. And then like they're giving me this like Lycra outfit and saying you're going to be called Ace, and they flew me to Mauritius first class. I'd never been anywhere. Now I'm like in this great big leather seat flying across to the Indian Ocean. And then when we get there, they say, it's going to be a training camp. And then I get there and it's not a training camp at all. It's just like a party that goes on for like a month. It was incredible, you know, and just had so much fun. And everything was just for free. You know, you just signed it to your room and they picked up the bill.
Right. And were the other Gladiators really welcoming of you when you were a newbie?
Yes and no. So you know, they say there's a healthy camaraderie, but also they sort of got one eye on your sideboards because they don't want you to take their top spot. Everybody, you know, the airtime is valuable, and everybody wants to be the top dog there. Yeah. So it was a funny atmosphere to sort of cope with, and you've got to try and sort of you've got to sort of almost establish your place quick as well, because if you don't, I noticed the Gladiators have come and gone. They've done one season, they've disappeared. Yeah. So you just don't want that to happen to you. So, you know, you've gone from having nothing to being earned. They used to pay £2,000 an hour on that show, plus vodka and tonic VAT. I didn't even know what that was until the tax man come chasing me for it, and then I had to find it. Yeah. But
and that's a lot of money now, obviously, but back then, you know.
Oh, I didn't know. I was like a kid in a sweet shop, you know. Being from Essex, I went and bought a massive telly. That's the first thing I did, bought a massive telly. Then I bought a big...
Boy racer car, was it?
Yeah, I got a Golf GTI. I got a leather settee. Yeah, all the things that I would want, you know.
Leopard skin seats or anything?
No, none of that. Big exhausts, all of those things. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's proper Essex.
Yeah.
Well, so there's lots of train of thought there. So Ace, you were called Ace. Was that a name you'd chosen, or was chosen for you? How did that?
No, I hated it. So they suggested it from the off. They were like, "We think you should be called Ace," and I was like, "You mean Ice?" You know? Like, no, Ace. And I was like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "Well, it's like the leader of the pack. You know, top trump. You know, you." And they were trying to sell it to me. I could tell they were trying to sell it to me, and I was like, "No, I really don't like it." And they said, "Well, you go away and have a think about a name." But when somebody says to you, "Go away and think of a name that it's going to stick with you for the rest of your life," it's a really difficult thing to do, you know. And you start looking at caravans, you know, and stuff like that, Swift, Ace, you know.
Swift, yeah.
You just think, you know, am I going to choose a name? And I remember speaking to a guy called Mark Griffin, who was Trojan. His gladiator name was Trojan on the show. Now, what I loved about Mark is he was very intelligent, but he'd not just been on Gladiators. He got the Gladiator gig, but he'd also made that step across to Hollywood. So he'd become the face of Action Man. He had like this $1 million contract with Hasbro.
Did he do that with his eyes?
Yeah, that's it, eagle eyes, yeah. You're older than I thought you were there. You remember that?
I am quite old, yeah. So all of you, like.
So you throw me.
So Trojan.
So he'd gone over to LA, and he was in movies now as well. He was in the movie when I met him with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and so he was a movie star, all of these things. And I remember him saying to me, "You're not just a VIP now, Warren." He said, "A very important person. You're a CIP, so you're a commercially important person." So what that means is, show business is a business. Yeah. I didn't realise that. Yeah. I mean, includes in the name. Yeah. But he says it's a business, and so you're a bit like social media now. You'll show the ideal you, but it won't be the real you. You're going to be selling something all of the time. He said, so make sure you choose a name that's commercially, valuable. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, and he said, because I made a mistake. I didn't do that. And I was like, hang on a minute, you're the mighty wooden horse of Trojan. That's a brilliant gladiator name. He said, Warren, in England, that's a good name.
Yeah, in America.
But in America, where I live, it's a condom.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's the worst name. Right. So I say, I go back to London Weekend Television, and Nasty Nigel Lithgow's going to me, have you thought of a name? And I was like, no, I haven't. He said, well, I really think you should go with Ace. We think it's a great name. And he said, and can I just say as a side note, McVitie's, the biscuit manufacturer, are getting rid of the ever popular club biscuit, and they're replacing it with a biscuit called the Ace Bar. And he said, so if you was to take the name Ace, it comes with tens of thousands of pounds of advertising revenue. I said, I love that name, Ace.
Tell us about the advert. Yeah.
But what they didn't tell me was when the biscuit came out, the strap line for this new biscuit was Ace, the incredibly thick chocolate biscuit.
And the thick is really emphasised as well.
Mate. And to make it worse, they did a whole advertising campaign. I'll never forget, it was like a little cartoon character biscuit, and it'd just do stupid things like it'd bungee jump and forget to put the cord on and then just smash on the pavement. It'd just say, Ace, the incredibly thick chocolate biscuit. And so everywhere I went, people were like, oh, thick biscuit. I was like, oh, this is a... Now, it's luck would have it, the biscuit flopped, actually. It didn't surpass the club bar. We've still got the club bar. But yeah, I sold out commercially. Yeah. I made a mistake.
So just quickly on Gladiators, what were just kind of your favourite kind of contests and stuff? Did you enjoy Duel? Was it Gauntlet? What were your favourite ones?
Favourite games were the ones where you didn't get smashed up, because you literally, although it looked like a live show on a Saturday night, most people thought that it was. Yeah. The reality was we filmed the whole show in 1 month. We all went to Birmingham National Indoor Arena. We stayed at the Hyatt Regency. We filmed 2 shows a day. And so with every game, it was like a fight, because you were fighting for your life. Not your life, but for your livelihood. Yeah. So with every game you'd get a broken finger or you'd twist something. Right. And so by the end of it, they were injecting you with all sorts. So you'd sort of look for games that were an easy win, if you like. So for me, it was games like Duel and Powerball and Gauntlet. They were the ones they keep throwing you in them, but it's like damage limitation. So I like that, the aerial games, the high games. There's one called Pendulum where you just hang on this great big ball and you chase someone around it. It's 40 foot in the air, swinging over a net that you can't see, but that's really exciting. Right. But an easy payday. And then another one that I loved was Hang Tough, where you swing on rings and you've got to catch the contestant. That's so geared to the gladiator's favour. Right. Because when you're being chased, it's like you're quite nervous, but chasing someone's a lot easier. Yeah. And we had little tips, like if I grabbed the rig first and just pulled, you could shake the whole rig and it made the contestant nervous.
Oh, wow. Dirty.
I know, it was cheap. Or another one we would do is the wall. So what I learned quite quickly is sometimes these lads were so small and nippy, they were really difficult to catch. But one day I went to run up and actually I missed my footing, and I slipped and my shoulder hit the wall. And as I did, I hit it so hard he fell off. Right? and I won the game without even having to do anything. And so I learned that every time I climb that wall now, every time I saw the wall, I thought, right, I'd run up to the wall before I climbed and I'd boot the wall. And sometimes it would work. They'd lose their footing and then I'd go and grab them. So games like that where, in fact, I met Giant recently, at the new series, and I was giving him tips on stuff like this. And he was just looking at me like, I thought you was a Christian, all these dirty tactics.
Well, looking at the new series and compared to the old one, it seems to me, I might be wrong on this, but it seems like the new contestants are a lot, like the blokes are a lot smaller, a lot skinnier, and a lot older. So there's like a 54-year-old bloke on one of them who kind of like was about 7 stone. It looked like if he fell out of his bed, he would do that. It looked back in the day, though, there were some pretty solid, chunky contestants that you had to come.
Yeah, and that was unfortunate for me because I joined at a time where they gave gladiators a lifespan of 3 years, and it ran for 10. Yeah. I joined in year 6, and people got bored of the format, so they were like, no, we're fed up with seeing a big bloke beating up a little bloke. So they started to bring in professional rugby players and stuff like that. Oh, and so you would get really smashed up. But I think that cost them a lot with insurance. People were getting broken backs and legs and necks. I mean, people were getting seriously hurt on that show. So I think now, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I look at the new show, and like you say, I've seen more meat on an OXO cube than some of them contestants. I'm like, well, how's this guy got on there? Yeah. But then when I watch it, I think, oh no, actually, I think what's gone on here, I think it's insurance. Right. It's more of a pantomime now. Yeah. The games seem a little bit simpler, and I'm not saying that what we did was better, but it was. We all know it. But no, I think it's insurance, and I think it's good. You don't want people getting hurt, do you? At the end of the day, it's a TV show.
Sure, yeah. So you obviously had fame and fortune. How were you feeling at this time? Because obviously, lots of money, lots of people knowing about you, popular. What was going through your head at this kind of time?
Oh, it was incredible. It just was incredible. Like I say, I was like, how has this happened? And my dad, I mean, although I had all that friction with my dad, like, I used to think, why am I like the black sheep of the family? Why has he kicked me out? All my brothers are working, they're doing all right. And, and I was living in this hostel. Now, all of a sudden, I'm riding high. Everyone knew I was. I could earn all of this money. Everyone wanted. And I remember my dad saying to me, actually, son, I was wrong and you were right. He said, you had a passion and you had a vision and you followed your heart. And it's paid off. He said, you can make more in a week than I can make in a month. He said, if I tell people that my son's a gladiator, I get work. People give me roofing jobs. Nice. And he said, I was right, you were wrong. And I found it quite confusing at the time, because initially when he sort of said this to me, I was like, yeah, I know, I was becoming conceited. When people are calling you ace, you start to believe it. So I'm like, well, if I've got this, if I'm a celebrity and I'm being celebrated, I must be. It's strange because you start believing your hype, if you know what I mean. And so I was just like, yeah, I know, Dad, yeah, I know. But looking back, it just shows how arrogant I was becoming, because here's my dad out there, the most honest, hard-working person I know, actually doing a great service, putting roofs on people's houses in all weather, and then here's me hitting people over the head with a stick. Do you know what I mean? Getting paid all this money, believing that I'm something special. And I think what compounded that as well was show business being a business. I started to learn that as much as it was all like red carpets and and glitter and champagne and everything else, it was actually quite a cutthroat business, and a lot of it was so false. Right. And to stay in the public eye, you have to stay relevant. They say current is currency. And so, show business being this business, you start dating people that are in the public eye, and they start dating you. And your private life becomes up for public consumption. You're always selling something. Actually, you're not a real person anymore. You just become like public property. And then when you've got, this is in the days of like News of the World and stuff. Yeah. These newspapers are ringing you up every day and they're saying, have you got any stories? The more salacious, the better. What you got? And I'm like, I ain't got any stories. They say, have you ever had sex on a plane? I'm like, no. And they say, we'll pay you $5,000 if you have. I'm like, yeah, I think I might have. Oh, wow. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, you're just telling these stories because you're like, oh, that's going to get me back in the paper. Yeah. And I heard it recently, I don't know, I think it was on Oprah Winfrey or something. Someone said, in a world without God, worldly success as a way of taking you to a place where your character won't sustain you. Yeah. And if you're not morally anchored anywhere, which I wasn't, I was corrupted. And I could see that the power and the fame was corrupting me more and more. So when these newspapers are saying to me, we'll pay you this, what you got for sale, and everyone's stitching each other up for stories, it's a real strange place to be. You know, it's almost like, you know, you can have the world if you just tell lies.
Yeah.
And this is really what was happening. So, like I say, after like the shine started to wear off it a bit, I started to think, oh, actually, something's not quite right here. Because on the outside, looking in, I looked like I had it all. Muscles, beautiful girlfriends, money, cars, traveling around the world. But on the inside, I knew I was spiritually empty. I knew I was spiritually bankrupt.
Right.
And I knew that all these new friends I suddenly had were only interested in, it was social proofing. They were only interested in knowing a guy that was Ace from Gladiators. They didn't want to know Warren. Yeah. And I just knew that if that stops, all this goes.
Right.
So as much as I thought that would bring freedom, do you know what I mean? And community, actually, it brought fear. Right. You know, I buy a new Ranger and think, yeah, I've made it. And then they bring out a new shape a month later. And I think, I've got to get that new one. Yeah. You know, in the end, I started to feel like a dog chasing its own tail, really. So it's this...
Because you talked before about like the paradox of pleasure. And do you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, I learned that fast, the paradox of pleasure, which just literally means the more you get of something, the less it satisfies. And that's so true, you know, and I started to see that, you know, I started to use people, started to use things. And even like, you know, I started to pick up destructive habits. You know, we'd go out and, you know, you'd go places. And again, being a celebrity, everywhere you go, they want you there because you're commercially important. So if you're buying their product or if you're in their shop, they know that other people are going to come to that. Yeah. You know, you go to all these different things and it's free champagne, everything's for free. And I started to pick up destructive habits, you know, and you don't really see it coming. You know, you just think, oh yeah, I like a glass of champagne. But then, you know, a year or two after that, you start finding you've got the shakes one morning. Right. And you don't really know why that's happening but these things are sneaking up on you and becoming...
So you're kind of sliding down. So, yeah. So Gladiator's finished, and so what was... You talk about being kind of spiritually bankrupt. What did you do about that spiritual bankruptcy then after Gladiators was over?
Yeah, so the show ended, and my whole identity come crashing down with that. I was like, oh, you know, and I hadn't made it to Hollywood. Turns out that Arnie did have some acting skills after all, because I didn't manage to do what he had done. And so I think in a way at the time, as much as it felt like my world was coming undone, and it felt like, I think I had like a midlife crisis really early, because I was only like 22 and the show finished. Wow. And I'd learned that actually, you know, you hear it from lottery winners, don't you? They say, I wish I never won the bloody money. You know, all my family split, everything went wrong, and it just separated me from real people. And I managed to see that really in show business. I thought that, like I say, that it'd bring freedom and acceptance, but actually I was like, actually that separated me from real people. But if life's not about riches, and if it's not about fame, and I'd learned the paradox of pleasure, the more you get it, less it satisfies. The higher you go in life, actually, the lower normal life feels. Life's sort of boring and dead unless you're doing something really exciting. So I went on a real spiritual search after that, because I thought, well, I know that money's not the answer. I know that fame's not the answer. And I searched everywhere. But as I say, you know, growing up, I'd gone to school and I heard about Jesus, but like in assembly and that, with a bit of collective worship, we'd sing a hymn. It's all put there for us to share. And then, like, you know, I'd go to the next lesson and they'd talk about Hawkins and Dawkins and that evolution is real. So there was this conflict. And I learned the hard way at school. You know, it was quite a rough school. I remember someone punching me in the face and tasting my own blood and thinking, wow, it's strong eat the weak in this world. Yeah. And I was reading Jason's book here. If you ain't got it, it's at the back. You've got to read Jason's book. You know, Jason enjoyed fighting. This was, you know, he grew up in this atmosphere, but I was very much like, as soon as being punched, I just couldn't punch my way out of a wet paper bag. I was like, you know, I need to do something about this, and I think this is why I started lifting the weights and everything else. Okay. So, yeah, went on this real spiritual search, completely ignored Jesus. I thought he was some weak bloke that was nailed to a cross 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, completely irrelevant, not life, but death. And I was, you know, I was really worshipping macho, you know, you've got to put my faith in my own body and myself. So I discounted the Bible, and I've met Christians as well that were I just thought were odd, just didn't seem, you know, and I've been to church. Yeah. They just almost, when I met a Christian, they always just sort of seemed like almost, not simple, but like they didn't have a care in the world. And I was like, what's going on there? Just didn't make any sense. And then I go to church and it was stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. There's a bloke at the front, dressed like your mother, telling you to call him father. It's like, what's that all about? Never made any sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I just searched. I mean, we lived back then. It's a bit like it is now. You know, there's lots of different. You know, there's lots of different spiritualities. People say, oh, you know, it's a bit like a Bible buffet, and you can have a little bit of the Bible here, add a bit of Buddha in there, add a bit of this in here, a bit of. So I started to study everything really. So every religion I studied. I spent a couple of years. I was quite lucky because I'd sort of half financially secured myself. So I think a lot of people don't have time to examine the evidence of this stuff. You know, I think life's so busy that it's difficult to sort of sit down, and you can't take a risk on matters of the soul and, you know, spirituality and eternity and stuff. It's either God or it isn't. And so I thought, well, if there is a God, I'm going to, you know, examine the evidence and find out whether there is or whether there isn't. And so I just studied every religion. And I found that most religions were morally commendable at best. You know, you're earning your way to God, trying to be a better person. But at worst, definitely causing wars, dangerous. All the different esoteric teachings, Eastern teachings, all these different gurus. I studied atheism even. And I just started to see that a lot of them just kept mentioning Jesus, and it really bugged me.
Right.
Because I was like, well, if you're something, you know, some spiritual, there's, you know, you've got this thing going on where you're born again or you come back as something else. Why do you keep talking about Jesus? It just really annoyed me. And I remember it just shows I was still putting my faith in money, actually, because I learned that there was a guy that lived near me when I was up in Yorkshire, and he's called Julian Richer. Okay. And he's worth like hundreds of millions of pounds.
So he's the hi-fi man. Is he the kind of high street kind of seller of? Is that there? No,
yeah, that's it. Richer Sounds. Yeah. So he's the biggest independent retailer, second to John Lewis in this country. Right. So he's still independent. Yeah. It's not a PLC company. And I heard that he lived near me. And I heard that he had a fellowship in his garden on a Friday. Wow. I also heard that he had a private jet and a couple of helicopters. And so I thought, I wouldn't mind meeting this fella, because I heard that Prince Charles paid him thousands of pounds for business advice. I thought, I'm just going to go and find out what this guy's about. Anyway, I remember going around his house. And he's like typical bloke if you've won the lottery, you know, he just had this aircraft hangar in his garden with every toy you can imagine in it. But when I met him, he was a real humble bloke, and I wasn't expecting that. And then I said, you know, I've met a lot of rich and famous people, and usually, you know it, they're full of themselves, you know, they're showing you their cars and their watches and everything else. I said, you seem quite humble, you seem to have things together. What's your secret? You know, and he said, I'll give you 2 bits of advice, would you take them? I said, yeah, go on. And he said, one, go on an alpha course. And I just thought, oh, another course. I've been on so many courses trying to find spiritual enlightenment, you know. And he said, but then what he said next really got me. He said, then get baptized and come back to me. And I thought he was joking. I was like, get baptized? Why would I do that? And I was a bit like, why would a guy with so much money be saying that? Because I thought, if you to know God, surely you can't have massive wealth. I thought you'd have to give everything away. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But here's a guy telling me to get baptized. And I remember going back to my wife after going to his house, and she said, how did you get on at that Julian's house? I said, I think he's like God Squad. Or I think he's one of these like Bible bashers or something. So I said he started talking about getting baptized or something. He said, it don't make any sense. Why would he be trying to recruit me? He said, he must have enough money. Because I made the assumption that church was just another organisation. That needs a few quid. It's there to shake your
money out.
Yeah. And I saw it like a speed camera. You know, it's like a speed camera says it's there for your safety, to care for you, but really it's getting your money out of your pocket. You know, I mean, that's all. That's really hard-hearted and cynical. And so my wife was always identified as a Christian, even though she never went to church or any of these things. But she said to me, well, maybe you should go on this alpha course. And it was so I went on an alpha course. And has anyone heard of an alpha course? Okay, well, I hadn't. If I knew it was linked to Christianity, I wouldn't have gone.
Right. So what happens? So yes, it's of course exploring Christianity. You went on it. What happened? What did you think? Because you would have met a lot of Christians. And they would have said a lot of stuff.
So I thought Christianity was another religion. I thought it was. I didn't know Christianity means Christ comes in and you're in Christ and it's the Holy Spirit and all this. No, didn't know any of this stuff. Right. But it was on the Alpha course that I first heard the gospel, and I heard it clearly explained. So I'd heard before, I'd said to people, what's the gospel? And they'd said, oh, Jesus loves you. And I'd say, no, that's good for you. Jesus might love you, but I don't want to hear it. Because I saw it as like a crutch for crippled people, really. If you can't cope with life, then you have to turn to God, you know. Yeah. So, but it was on the Alpha course where they said, the good news of Jesus Christ is only good news if you receive it.
Right.
And I was like, hang on a minute. So you're telling me that God created me and he loves me, but I'm separated by sin? And they're like, yes, you're separated by sin. That's why Jesus came. He did something about that sin. And I'm like, but I'm not a sinner. And they said, well, then you don't understand what sin is, because sin, Warren, is just going your own way can be just going your own way instead of God's way. That's why Jesus came and he said, repent, which just means turn away from all them shiny things you're chasing in the world. Turn to God, repent and believe. And this is how you are reconciled to God. You come into relationship with him. And I'd always thought, Martin, that, if I'm a good person and I do more good than bad in this world and I die, I'd go to heaven. And they were like really straight with me. And they were like, no, that's not the message of the gospel at all.
Right.
There's no excuse. You would have heard about Jesus. God will make sure that you hear about him and the gospel. You've been ignoring it and going your own way.
Well, so they're pretty blunt and down the line then with you.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think that's really important because I think sometimes it's too nice to say to people, Jesus loves you and God loves you, but it's a bit like, yes, he's created you and he has an incredible plan on your life, and you don't have to live a life of fear. You can live a life of freedom, a life of love, but actually, it's something you have to do. It's a gift, Jesus is a gift. He has to be received, and if you get a gift and you don't unwrap it, it's a pointless gift, isn't it? So once they started telling me this, I was like, why has no one ever told me this before then? I've gone to school singing about this. No one ever said that I had to do something about it, and that's such a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
So all these years I've been chasing shiny things, not knowing that I was actually rebelling from God, going my own way. But then I think, again, with a hard heart, I've been in show business, and like I say, it was all supposed to be glitter and red carpets, but it was very cutthroat. Now I'm being told by a vicar, who's saying to me, you can be in a real relationship with the living God of the creator of the universe. You can know him personally. You can have all your sins forgiven, those things that you're ashamed of, the things you're guilty about, all that can be wiped clean. You can live forever, so you don't have to live this life of fear anymore, because you'll have eternity with God. In fact, that's what you're created for. You're created for an eternity with God. That's why in your heart you don't want to die. That's why people resist death, because that's not God's plan for your life. And then they said, and this bit floored me as well, and you can be filled with the Holy Spirit. I'm like, what's that? And they said, well, Warren, this is how, when Jesus ascended and the church was born, this was called Pentecost, and actually he poured out his Spirit. So Jesus went up to send his Spirit down, and so you're living in the golden age of God. He's pouring out his Spirit on anybody who believes and decides to follow him. So you can be filled with the power of God. And I'm like, what's that? Explain. And they're like, well, you can do all Jesus did and more. I'm like, what, like supernatural stuff? I've been trying to get power all my life. Now I'm being told I could be filled with the power of God. I'm like, this all sounds a bit too good to be true. I'm like, how much is this going to cost me then?
You're getting your checkbook out.
Yeah. I'm like, come on. Do you know what I mean? They're like, I said, what's it going to cost me all this then? And they're like, nothing. At the point of receiving it, they said, it's like the NHS. Right? Someone's got to pay. And they said, and this is the thing, it costs Jesus everything. Yeah. And so it's, so it took me a while to wrap my head around that. And again, like I said, I just couldn't. It just seemed too much that I've been living life in 2D, but there was a third dimension I knew nothing of. And so I started to examine evidence, and I was a right pain in the backside on that course, because I was living in York, but I was traveling to London. I had no idea that the Dead Sea Scrolls exist. Wow. Codex Sinaiticus, the first Bible. It's in the British Museum. You can go and look at it. John's Gospel.
I took my wife there on a second date.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. He said romance is dead, eh? But yeah, so you were exploring all that kind of like the evidence for the reliability of the Bible, whether you could trust it.
Yes, and I didn't know that you could. I didn't know you could. You can't refute the person of Jesus. I mean, he existed. He's real, and so it's like, as I'm going back to this course trying to disprove it, I'm like, I remember the curate Ben Doolans just said to me, he said, you know what, Warren? I said, what? He went, you've examined the evidence. I mean, you've asked me 100 times. I've explained it to you. And he says, you know the biggest block between you and God? I said, go on, Ben. He said, you. Wow. He said, you just can't get out of the way of yourself. He said, if you could humble yourself and invite God into your life, he'll come. He said, you believe in your heart that Jesus is the Son of God, Warren, don't you? If you do, because you've examined the evidence. I said, Yeah, I do. He said, well, confess it with your lips and invite him in and he'll come into your life.
Cool.
I said, what, I'm just one prayer away from that? And he was like, yeah. And I still wouldn't do it. And that's strange. I still wouldn't do it. And I tell you what the clincher was for me was, as I say, my wife had always identified as a Christian because her mum said she was a Christian. And she was a good person, don't get me wrong. My wife had some ideas that I didn't believe in, like forgiveness and stuff. You know, she had these ideas. I thought, no, you get even in this world. We was on this Alpha course, and I remember that curate telling me all this, and I said, right, okay, just run it past me again. And I remember saying to him, I said, I can have all my sins forgiven, slate white clean, anything I'm guilty of, washed clean, and be made holy, right with God. Is that correct? He's like, yeah, that's correct. I said, right, okay. I can have eternity with God, a relationship with God, an eternity with God, live forever, have no fear anymore, not have any fear of anything, just by saying this prayer. He's like, yeah. I said, and I can have the Holy Spirit come and dwell within me, which will give me power to do all Jesus did and more. And he said, yeah. I said, my wife's a Christian. He went, yeah. I said, there's absolutely no evidence of this Holy Spirit living in her.
Well, you dropped her in it.
Right. Now, that sounds really disrespectful, but that's not what I meant. What the point I was getting at was that she's, a lovely wife, lovely, best mum she could be, but she wasn't doing what Jesus did and more. If we had a couple of quid spare, she'd give some money to charity. She didn't even go to church, but she's telling me she's a Christian. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and all through the course she's going, yes, I'm a Christian, you just need to open your eyes. But the reality was, she wasn't a Christian, because what he then said to me was, Warren, I said, what? And I thought he was going to say, can you leave the course? You've been disruptive. But what he actually said was, you're right. And I thought, no way, I've just won a domestic and I've got a vicar on my side. Yeah. He said, you're right. And I was like, and then he said, so what are you going to do about it? Wow. And I think I was so thankful to him for doing that. He was brave enough to step in that area where he was risking offending my wife, potentially offending me, but he knew that this is a matter that, when it comes to matters of eternity in the soul, we have to be brave enough to step into them areas. And he did, and he said, you know what you've got to do. Do you want to pray with me? And I was like, yeah, I suppose so. And so, it was then that I said a prayer. And I've got to say, Martin, that when I said this prayer, and he was like, right, come Holy Spirit, make me the person you want me to be, and these things. I opened my eyes, and I don't know if I'd watched too many Bruce Almighty films or what, but I fully expect that I'll be levitating a little bit, or I'll be able to part the traffic, high horse silver. But none of that happened. I opened my eyes and I was like...
Nothing? Actually nothing?
Nothing. Yeah. I just was like... Where's this power? I don't feel like any stronger. It ain't like the pump in the gym. I can
remember the music in Bruce Almighty when you do it.
Yeah. I was like, I don't really feel. I felt peace, but I didn't really feel a lot different straight away. But I remember walking out there that night, and I did feel a peace. I thought, hey, something's changed here. Yeah. Something's different. And my wife saw such a change in me over the next 2 weeks. She said, that prayer that you said in now, I need to come and say that. I need to come to Alpha and I need to say that prayer. Wow. And she did. So she came in and she said a prayer, invited God into her life. And she was filled with the Holy Spirit and everything changed for her. She didn't realize all them years she thought she was a Christian, she'd never actually been born again in the Spirit. Yeah. So we were embodied spirits, but that spirit had never, had never come in. So
she had the Christian by name, but not by nature.
Yes.
She needed the change of heart and the being born again, like you say, and receiving the Spirit.
Exactly. And so for me, over them weeks, it was, she didn't stop crying for like 3 days. I was starting to get worried in there. I was like, why do you keep crying? She was like, oh, it's the Holy Spirit. But for me, it was very much like, I like to say, I came out of the rat race, because the human race is a race, isn't it? If we reduce it to that. But it doesn't have to be. It's like I like to say I came out of that rat race and into God's grace. And people say, oh, what happened then? Where did it all go wrong? I say, no, this wasn't a crisis conversion. Nothing was going wrong. Everything that life could give, I had. I was like King Rat, if you like. But it was empty. Yeah. And so I then started to experience a peace and a freedom and a joy that I had never experienced before, And so it's like, and then I started to just see a whole different spiritual realm that I'd never seen before. Yeah. and my life started to transform in ways that I would have never imagined.
Yes, that's incredible. Just tell us briefly a bit about some of those changes then that started to happen. Did family around, did they kind of think, what on earth's going on? This is just a flash in the pan. This is a weird little thing going on there. It'll change, it'll come back. Or how did family, friends react then?
Well, initially, like, my phone stopped ringing and all my friends disappeared. And I'm like, what's this all about, God? Because, you get a lot of your identity, and we were born to be in community. So if your community is like friends that all want to go to the pub on a Friday night and get hammered, then suddenly you're going, actually, I don't want to come out and get wasted. Because God's now given me a power. I gave up smoke. I got baptized. I stopped smoking. I stopped the drinking to excess and stuff. And they're a bit like, oh. And I started to see, actually, them relationships are conditional. They're only my friends if I go and get hammered with them. You know what I mean? So initially, my phone stopped ringing, but then God started replacing those friends with genuine relationships. And I started to see that a lot of them genuine relationships were coming from a church. And so I started to look at the church different. I'm like, I thought the church was the building. Yeah. I didn't know a church is the body of Christ. It's other Christians coming together, unconditionally loving each other, and God working through them. So I started to understand that. And then, as much as my friend group and family shrunk, even my own brothers were like, oh, Wild's gone nuts. He's found God. I said, I didn't know I'd lost him, but they've told me. And so, all those things. But now I have a massive church family, and I have lots of brothers and sisters in Christ. And you know what I find amazing? How God uses, how God works through your story. There's so many people now who initially were like, oh, he's lost the plot, he's gone Dala, he's turned to God. These are the very people now that later down in life that ring me up. I mean, I remember there's another gladiator. I won't say his name. I don't want to embarrass him. But when I came to faith, he rang me up. He said, I hear you found God. I saw you on this morning talking to Philip Schofield, telling him about Jesus. And he said, I think you're going. He said, you're going to lose everything. You're going to get brainwashed and all this thing. I said, well, you might think that. But I don't think that, because I've seen something. And he said, do you really believe it? I said, I don't believe it. I know it. I've met the person of Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit. And he just thought, I was nuts at that time. But it's no coincidence that he's the guy that rings me literally twice a week for life advice. And I feel like saying to him, why are you ringing me? You said I was nuts 10 years ago and I'd lost my mind. But I think truth has a way of punching through, and in his life, there's lots of people telling him what he wants to hear, but there's not many people that will tell him truth, especially with relationships and these sorts of things. And it's even the same with my brothers. I've got 3 brothers now, and they're all builders in London. And when I came to faith, they were like, oh, Wild's gone mad. And they were getting embarrassed about it. They were like, what's going on here? You was always the one we looked up to, and now you've gone all a bit soppy with the God stuff. And I knew something was amiss because I was living in York, and my brothers being builders. Any builders here? I know Jason is, but Friday's known as Poets' Day. Did you know that? Yeah. For a builder, P off tomorrow's Saturday.
I was going to say you go to the pub usually.
Yeah. So everyone leaves early on a Friday and gets hammered, has a few beers, spends a lot of their wages. Yeah. So when my youngest brother knocked on my door in York, travelled 200 miles on a Friday, I knew something was amiss. And I opened the door and I was like, what's going on? And he was like, me and your brothers, and Fred and Jay, we're really worried about you. I was like, what are you worried about? Honestly, well, we had an auntie years ago and she lost her mind, went to God and ended up in a nut house, he said. And we think the same's going to happen to you. And I said, listen, I know what I'm doing. Everything will be fine. His name's Bod, my brother. It's his nickname, Bod. I said, listen, Bod, everything's going to be fine. Don't you worry at all. And he's like, no, we're really worried. He spends the next day or so on the phone, ring my other 2 brothers. Oh, I'm talking to him. Anyway, I was getting baptized on the Sunday in St. Michael the Belfry Church, which is right next to the York Minster. And he comes to the church with me, again, desperately trying to talk me out of this. He said, well, don't do it. Do not get in. Don't, in front of all these hundreds of people, don't go and get into that pool and get baptized. This is madness. Don't do that publicly. Park this God stuff up while you've still got a chance, And I'm like, okay. We get to the church. He's in the second row from the front. Me, my wife, my 2 kids, they were both 10, 11 at the time. We're getting baptized. As we get to the front near the pool, a few people were getting baptized. I look to my brother, and he's crying his eyes out in the second row. Like, literally, a grown man, just bawling his eyes out. I'm like, I said to my wife, hang on a minute. I went over and said, Bod, everything's going to be all right. I said, I know what I'm doing. You don't have to worry. And he went, I couldn't believe it. He just went, I know. I said, what's the matter? Then he went, I want to give my life to Jesus. Right? I was like, are you taking a pee? And he was like, no. And he was crying his eyes out, right? And he said, I want to give my life to Jesus. So the vicar now's waiting for me with a mic. And I went back, he said, everything all right? I said, well, it was, but my brother in the second row says he wants to give his life to Jesus. And he went, do you? And he walked over to him. He walked over to him, and my brother went, yeah, I want to give my life to Jesus. And so he led him in a prayer there in front of like 500 people in St. Michael of Belfry. And he said, do you want to get baptised as well? He said, well, come on. Then he went in the pool before me.
That's amazing.
It was super. Yeah. So he went back south to tell my other brothers mission failed. So you never know. And this is the beauty of being a Christian. When Christ is working in and through, you just don't know what he's doing. I'm thinking that my brother's trying to talk me out of it. Yeah. God's like, no, this boy's going to get baptized before you.
He's the last person you're thinking, and he's seeing what Jesus has done in your life, and he's massively attracted. Yeah,
and don't you find this? You know, the most least likely people, you think, you'll mention something, and you think this person's not listening, or this person thinks that I'm mad, but these are the ones that God's really got there, especially if they're objective, because it's like, a lot of people can be apathetic, but it's usually the ones who are like, ooh. It's like, hang on a minute, the Holy Spirit's on the move here. Yeah, so exciting. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. We're going to come to a close in a moment, but just to finish, can you just share a little bit about what else you've been doing, like kind of traveling around, talking about Jesus? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, again, I said when I got gladiators, I have to pinch myself, didn't I? But that was, a temporary thing, and it was folly, really. But I've got to say, I have to pinch myself regularly now. For me, Jesus says, I come that you have life, have it to the full, abundant life. And that's not just life now, that's a glorious one after this one. And I've got to say that I'm so blessed. I get I'm traveling all over the place. I get to speak to phenomenal, interesting people like yourselves. I'll go everywhere with the church. I go into schools. I go all over the place, sharing the gospel. Someone came to me and shared the gospel, and it transformed my life. And I get the privilege of being able to, just by sharing testimony, share the gospel as well in the same way. And when I said about the priest at the front standing there dressed like my mother, telling me to call him father, I would have thought you were joking. So last month, me and my wife were ordained as vicars in St. Paul's Cathedral.
Wow. So you've got your own frock.
So now I wear a dress as well. I never saw that coming. But again, this is an immense privilege. You just don't know what God's going to do. You think one thing, God's got another plan, and so it's just every day that I get up, I pursue the Holy Spirit, I open that Bible, I pray, I'm like, Lord, take me where you want to take me, and just see what happens. And it's a phenomenal ride. So I always say to people, what's it like being a Christian? And if we get to a point of praying, I say, put your seatbelt on, you're going to be in for one ride, one brilliant ride. So I'm having a great time.
Oh, that's amazing. I think so much more we could ask you, but I think we're going to have to kind of end it there for this evening. But if you want to chat to Warren, the Reverend Warren, I should say, afterwards, then please obviously go ahead and do that. But should we show our appreciation?
No, thank you.
Warren. I'll let you fall over first. Back with you, and we're going to continue thinking a bit about Jesus, but before we get onto Jesus, I wanted to kind of pick up on some of the things that Warren was chatting about earlier. He was making reference to certain figures in the 1980s, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and the other guy as well, Rambo Man, as well, Sylvester Stallone. Well, I want to bring up attention back to another figure from the 80s in a few moments. But we start here with, strangely, Berlin. And we're going to head back about 35 years or so to the Berlin Wall. And at the Berlin Wall in 1989, remember around about the 9th of November, I think the wall started coming down. And then the 31st of December 1989 was a massively culturally significant date, because it was a date where East Germans and West Germans united together by inviting this fella to come and sing to them. It was the legendary David Hasselhoff. and you mustn't hassle the Hoff. But the Hoff, he was absolutely loved anywhere where you spoke German as your language, but absolutely nowhere where you didn't speak German. But anyway, he was loved by East and West Germans alike, and so he was invited to sing above the Berlin Wall to usher in this whole new era of freedom where we'd live in a post-conflict age and people would be free to really do what they wanted. And the reason why they got him in is because he had a hit song which is called Looking for Freedom. And I'm singing it in the back of my head now badly. But anyway, he sings it badly as well. But Looking for Freedom. And it's all about this young man driving off with the sun rising, drive off in his car into this distant sunrise. And the whole aim is that here's a young man who can go anywhere and do anything and be anyone he wants to be. And that song, although we kind of joke a bit about the old Hoff, it was a kind of song that really did mark a new turning point. We did think as a world that things would be free now. We'd be no more conflicts, no more war. We'd be able to do the kind of things we wanted. And I think as a society, although we wouldn't put it down to David Hasselhoff, we are shaped by that kind of dream, that we desire in our deepest hearts to be able to do what we want and go where we want and be anywhere we want. And so in the world in which we live, there's this kind of drunkenness of options out there right now. The internet has added to all the things and all the possibilities that are out there for us. And yet it was interesting hearing Warren and how actually him following his heart and following that dream, actually he ended up so often just spiraling because of all the things that were going on in his heart that he couldn't control and things like that. And yet, again, from listening to Warren, he was talking about how we desire to be free, and he wanted to be free the whole of his life, if you like. And all of us have got that deep down desire, that we want to be free people, to be the people we are supposed to be liberated, to be set free from the things that bind us and dominate us. So, but what is freedom? I want to ask that question tonight. What is freedom, and how do we get it? So if you ask our society right now, you just have to go back to Elsa, don't you, to find out what most people think freedom is. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. It's about setting your own agenda, following your own path. Freedom is, if you like, is not discovered out there in the world, people think. It's discovered within yourself. It's discovered by looking in. And if you like, that's been going on for years and decades and decades. You go back to all the Disney films, and you go back to The Wizard of Oz, I think it's 1939. And the whole kind of thing behind that film and so many Disney films is that you need to rediscover who you are by looking within. And if only you look within, then you'll find the answers. So that kind of weird guy with the funnel on his head over there, you think that you've got no real kind of heart. Well, actually, look within, you'll find you had a heart all along. The strange lion thing that looks like it's been used in my nan's curlers, that thing. Again, you think you're not brave? Well, you are. Just look within, you'll find the answers. And that has been pumped into our sound waves for decades and decades. And I think many of us believe that. So my question tonight is then, what does Jesus have to say to that view of freedom? That freedom is found by looking in, freedom is found by following your heart. What does Jesus have to say to that? And are we really free? Are you free? Well, listen to what Jesus has to say. Each night we're picking something from the Bible where Jesus talks into a particular issue. And this is what I'm going to read now, where Jesus talks about what real freedom is and how we get it. So to the Jews who had believed Jesus, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." So Jesus is going to tell us a few things about what real freedom actually is. And the first thing I think he picks up on, and a guy called John, who was one of his close friends, wrote this down for us. That's why we're reading it. And it's in the Bible. What Jesus first of all tells us is that freedom is not what we think it is. So it's not the Elsa view. It's not the David Hasselhoff view of life, of looking within, following your own heart. That's not where freedom lies. And perhaps you're beginning to discover that. Perhaps you've known that for years, that freedom isn't there following my heart. Actually, it's led to slavery. But Jesus comes out all guns blazing, and he says, look, no, freedom is not what you think it is. Listen again to his words. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples, Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So Jesus says, if you want freedom, then you need to hear what the truth is, and you need to believe it, and therefore step into it and live it out. You need to hear it, believe it, and step into it. He says it's the truth that will set you free. Now, when we hear that, maybe we get a bit twitchy, we get a bit nervous, and we go, surely if someone tells me this is what is true, surely they're just trying to gain power over me. They're just trying to gain some kind of control over me, aren't they? And if someone comes in and says this is what is true for all people in all times and in all places, surely that's exactly what they're trying to do, trying to wield their influence over me. And yet Jesus comes in and says, no, it's the truth that will set you free. Maybe we think, actually, if someone says that, then they're just going to clip my wings. I'm not going to be able to fly. And truth claims that people make over my life, that's just going to restrict me. And again, we've been fed on this age as a Canadian philosopher bloke called, I've forgotten his name now, he's gone out of my head. But anyway, he says that we live in this age of authenticity, which means, again, this whole idea that we just want to follow our own hearts and throw off the shackles of what other people have told us. Politicians, parents, whoever it might be, we just want to throw those off and just do me. That's what we want to do. So we live in this era where we want to throw that off, but Jesus says, no, it is the truth that sets you free. But there's a Dalai Lama, not Warren's new boss, Justin Welby, but it's the Dalai Lama, and he said many years ago, I remember reading this article, he said, look, whether Hindu or whether Muslim or whether Christian, he said it is wrong to try to convert. And maybe we go, yeah, I agree, it's wrong that people try and convert. But what's he trying to do when he says that statement, when he says it's wrong to try to convert? He's trying to convert you and me to his way of thinking. You see, I think that's unavoidable. All of us make truth claims in our lives. All of us think that the world would be a better place if you believed what I believed. And we're all at it. We're all making truth claims. But no truth claim about life can have infinitely elastic boundaries. There's always got to be things that are in and things that are out, things that are right and things that are wrong. So, for example, if we set up a pie-eating society here in Morden, I don't think there is one, but if there isn't one, you need to set one up. But imagine you set a pie-eating society up here in Morden, and you're there to eat pies, to talk about pies, and all of a sudden one person rocks up and they bring a bag of Haribo in, and they say, actually, today, can we talk about Haribo? And then you could say, look, as much as I love Haribo, they're tang-fastic, as much as I love these things, we're a pie-eating society. We talk about pies, Fray Bentos, pucker pies, steak and kidney, short crust pastry, puff pastry. But we talk about pies. That's what we're about. We're a pie-eating society. You see, there's beliefs which are in and beliefs which are out. And whatever truth claims people make about life, then we've got to realize that there's always going to be things that are in and things that are out, and things that we need to agree with and things that we need to pass to one side. But as everyone is making these truth claims in life, the key question to ask is, which is true? And I love that what Warren was saying earlier, that how he was someone who thought, I've got to investigate what is the truth about God, what is the truth about me, what is the truth about the world in which we live. And he spent loads of time looking into the evidence for different religions and different belief systems out there. And I wonder if you got that question, which is true? Well, the way you're going to know whether Jesus, who claims to be the way, the truth, and the life, really is that and not a fraud, is by looking at him for yourself. David advertised some gospels, some books, some biographies from the Bible, which are eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life. If you've never read one before, even if you have, go away and read it again and see with your own eyes and listen with your own ears, is this Jesus really who he claims to be? Because if he is, surely it makes sense to put your trust in him, as Warren and many others have. Jesus comes in and says the truth sets you free, not looking within, but the truth that is out there in his teaching, in him as a person. Then he says something else. So he says the truth will set you free, but that implies something about us if he says the truth will set you free. So people responded, they answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we should be set free? Jesus replied, very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. So Jesus comes in and he says, freedom isn't what you think it is. It's actually listening to the truth, believing the truth, and living out the truth. And then he comes in and says, and this, you're not as free as you think. And so often we think, I'm free to make up my own mind, do my own things, follow my own heart. But you're not as free as you think. And this caused an uproar. This caused loads of the Jews in Jesus' day to have real beef with Jesus. They were like, you can't be saying that. How can you be saying to us that we're not free? We've never been slaves of anyone, is their response. And if they were back on X or whatever back then, not that they were, but if they were, they would be saying, I'm offended. You know, we live in this era, which we all know, where everyone's very showy about being offended by everything and everyone. And they would have been like that back then. We're massively offended, Jesus, because you're saying that we are slaves. We've never been slaves of anyone. And maybe here tonight you go, I've never been a slave of anyone. I've never been a slave to anything. I'm free. But Jesus says, no, actually, you're not. You're a slave. And we'll see what he means in a moment. But they were saying, no, if you look at our past, look at our pedigree, we are children of Abraham, they're saying. Look at our history. We're good people who are free. But it didn't take Sherlock Holmes to realize, actually, as a nation, Israel had never been free. Well, for ages anyway. They'd been under slavery in Egypt, and then to some other kind of Canaanite nations, then Assyria, the Babylonians, the Grecians, and now the Romans. It happened quite a few times. And so they were just affronted. They didn't like what Jesus had to say. They were annoyed by it. Again, you know, here in Warren, when he was first told actually he was a sinner, he was really offended. He was really, actually, you can't say that. And that's what Jesus had the love and the care to say to them, actually, no, you're slaves, and you're slaves to sin. Not because he wants to cripple them, but because he wants them to see the truth so that they can be set free into the glorious, incredible life that he has for them. And so maybe tonight we take that stance where we say, actually, I'm quite offended by hearing that I'm a slave, and as Jesus says, a slave to sin. And we say, and actually, I think for myself, I'm a Londoner, I think for myself, I'm not a slave. But you know, all the things we end up believing so often are kind of amalgamation of what we've heard growing up and what we've heard from the media, what we've heard from social media, from the friends we hang out with, the people we love to listen to, and the films we love to watch, the YouTube channels we love to subscribe to. So often we're shaped by those kind of beliefs. Jesus says, no, none of us are free. In fact, we're all slaves to sin. And using that phrase, slave to sin, it must mean then that we have a master, and that master is sin. It's something that dominates us, something that dominates your thoughts, something that dominates your feelings, something that dominates what you do with your hands and your feet. Jesus says it's a master that controls you. Using the word sin is very, I think, unpopular in our society. There's a interesting lady in the States who's a Shakespeare scholar. I hated Shakespeare at school. I used to get all the cheat notes and write them in my GCSE books so I could copy them out for my essays. That's how much I hated Shakespeare. But anyway, she's a Shakespeare scholar, and she's got something very insightful to say, though, about sin. She says this, that nobody sins anymore. Of course, I don't mean that people don't do bad, horrible, nasty, cruel things. We, of course, do. It's just that we don't like to call what we do a sin. Other people are bad. I'm just emotionally traumatized, conditioned by my upbringing, stressed and anxious, and most of all, misunderstood. Why would I consider myself a sinner? It implies a failure on my part, which doesn't accord well with the validation I feel I'm entitled to. Calling myself a sinner makes me feel shame, and besides, it sounds unsophisticated and religiously neither modern nor enlightened. But in what she's saying, she's not in any way arguing against sin. She's arguing actually for it. She's saying actually too often we make excuses, and sure there are horrible things that happen to us in our lives and are done to us. But she's saying too often we hide behind other things in our lives and try and deflect and blame shift on all these kind of things, when actually sometimes in life we just need to be honest and actually go, yeah, at the heart of my life there is a problem that's shaping my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and it is sin. What do I mean by sin? What does the Bible mean by sin? What does Jesus mean by it? Well, to be enslaved to sin, there's loads of ways of describing it, but sin is this, you know, as you see, look at the word, I is at the center of it. It's where yourself is at the center of everything. About 500 years ago, one bloke said that sin is about man being, or human beings being curved in on themselves. So if you want a picture of it, we are cheesy quavers, all of us. We're curved in on ourselves. See, we're made for a purpose. We're made to enjoy God, to love God, and to love other people. Live this kind of cross-shaped life, if you like, loving God, loving people. That's where real life is. And yet the Bible says, no, but the problem is that all of us have a master that's come in that isn't God anymore, that isn't Jesus. And the master is sin, this self-absorption, where everything we view is through the lenses of me and my feelings and how I want, and my wants and my desires. And if we're honest with ourselves, we do really act like quavers. We really are curved in on ourselves. Everything is about me. In the Bible, very early on, there's a bit where the Lord speaks to a guy called Cain who murders his brother. And he says to him, look, sin is crouching at your door. And its desire is to have you. Its desire is to destroy you. Sin is crouching at your door. I think so often we think, oh yeah, I'm not really that bad. Sin's only a tiny little thing anyway. Occasionally I do some bad things. But the Lord says, no, sin is huge. It's massive. But it appears like a little cat. It appears like this little cat crouching down. It's going to do no harm. But all of a sudden, it pounces out of the dark and it destroys you and it tears you apart. And we are mastered by that cat in our lives, and it's tearing us apart. Our sin is tearing us apart. So Jesus comes and he says, freedom is different to what you think. It's not found by following your heart. It's actually by following his. He comes and he says, you're not as free as you think. You're actually a slave to sin. And in other words, you're a slave to following yourself rather than him. But he doesn't leave it just there. And I think it is important to look at that stuff and go, this is what Jesus is saying we need to hear. But he says, you also need to hear this. And he ends up with these words. He says, now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So Jesus comes now and he says to us tonight, he says, look, I am more freeing than you think. I'm way more freeing than you think. Again, I love hearing different people's stories and hearing Warren's story, but wasn't that again that he was like, oh, what's Jesus going to have to do with me? I don't want anything to do with this Jesus. But actually he ended up coming to this place where actually he goes, no, Jesus is exactly who I need. And Jesus comes and he says, yeah, that is true. You need Jesus. I need Jesus. We all need Jesus. What this world needs most is Jesus, because he is the one who can liberate us from our sin, from our slavery to have to follow it. You know, because sin is our master, the most we can choose is when, where, and how we sin. But we can never choose if, because we're always going to keep giving into it because it dominates and it infests and poisons our lives. So the picture Jesus gives is a bit like, I guess, if you going back to school, and school kids, my kids, they still love playing it as well, but they love playing tag. Everyone loves playing tag. And when I was at school, we used to play stuck in the mud. And you'd obviously run around the playground, you'd touch someone, tag someone, and then they would be stuck in the mud. And the only way they could be free, weirdly, was if you ran under their legs to set them free, and then they could run around again. And the picture Jesus is giving is that all of us are stuck in the mud. Every single one of us in this room tonight, you're stuck in the mud. You're unable to move. You're stuck. You can't move. No matter what you do, if you think positively, it won't change it. If you change something, you change a habit, change a belief, nothing seems to be doing anything. You're just stuck there. All of us are like that, Jesus says. But he makes this other claim. He makes the claim that he is the only one who is running around the playground. He's the only one who's actually free. He's the only one who can actually live life and run and enjoy the freedom of it. And you hear that. You go, here's a bloke 2,000 years ago saying, you're all stuck, I'm free. And maybe you're thinking, that is the height of arrogance. Well, I put it to you, it's either the height of arrogance or there's an alternative. And it's this, that it's the height of accuracy. That actually what he's saying is true. He's not saying it in an arrogant way for any way. When you look at Jesus, he's the most humble person you'll ever see. But he's saying it that it's true. And he wants to say it that it's true and let you know that he's the only one running around. And that if he kind of metaphorically runs through your legs, then you will be free. He wants you to know that because he knows that he's the only one who can set you free. He says a slave is never a permanent member of the family, but a son is. And so he says, I am God the Son. And if I set you free, you will be free indeed. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. This is what Jesus wants for you. He says freedom is not found in doing your own thing in life, but freedom is coming back to God, back into his family. And if you do that, he says you will be made a son, a daughter forever. You will get to enjoy the privilege of knowing him and just being set free and be forgiven for all the wrongs you've done. And Warren was talking a lot about the Holy Spirit and how he comes into your life. And that is absolutely true. When you trust in Christ, what he does is God, the Holy Spirit, then comes into your heart. He gives you a new heart, a new start, a fresh start. He forgives you, and then he begins to empower you to change. And sure, it's a battle being a Christian, and there's ups and downs, and life's a roller coaster for sure. As Ronan Keaton once said, life is a roller coaster, just got to ride it. But it's true, it is a roller coaster, but the Holy Spirit is then living in you, and he gives you power to fight against sin. and to start to change and start to become more like Jesus. And when you see Jesus for who he is, that is exactly who you want to become like. The one who actually gets life right, who loves God and loves people perfectly. Maybe you're thinking tonight, actually, I wouldn't mind actually be forgiven because my life does stink and I know I need forgiveness. Maybe tonight you're thinking, actually, to know the warmth and the love of God and being in his family is exactly what I need, and I want to be in that. And in the moment, I'm going to offer an opportunity for you to pray, again, like other people have testified to, how they've prayed and they've just received Jesus and their lives have been changed forever. In a moment, I'm going to offer that opportunity, but maybe you have a question still tonight. Maybe you're thinking, but if actually I turn to Jesus and ask him to forgive me and ask him to set me free so that I can live for him. Maybe if I do that, though, if I do that, surely I've got to obey God. Surely then that means I've got to go from being a slave to my heart to being a slave to God. I've got to obey him. And sure enough, being a Christian does mean that you then seek to obey God in your life and what he says for you. But do you know what I've found, and many other Christians have testified to, every time you go and live your own way, it stinks. It ruins other people's lives. But as you live in God's way, actually it's the most liberating way to live. It's a life-giving way. It's a life-giving way to others. Is when then people will come and phone you up, like with Warren again, and kind of ask you, they're seeing the difference Jesus makes. They're seeing actually that his way is the only way to live. And I think some of us have problems because we think, actually, I don't want to obey God, because we have pictures of people like Kim Jong-un in our head of what God is like. Or we have this picture of some weird bearded bloke with bolts in his hands ready to strike you. But if you want to know what God is like, Jesus says this constantly in John's Gospel. He says, look at me. If you've seen me, you have seen the Father. If you see me, you've seen God. There is no ogre God hiding behind the back of Jesus. But as you look on Jesus, that is who God is. And he says, look at what I've done for you. He says, if you want to know exactly what I'm like, what kind of a powerful God who created this world I am, he says, look at this. What does he do with all his power? He uses it to become human. He's big enough to become small. He's this God who loves you so much he became human. He's a God who loves you so much that he went and bled and died on a wooden cross for you. The nails didn't have to hold him there. He could have pinged them out at any moment. But he said, no, out of my furious love for you, I will stay and I will die for you, because I know that's the only way I can pay the price for you, to be bought out of your slavery and to be brought into my family. And as you see Jesus, doesn't he start to melt your heart? You go, that's what you do for me. Yes, it is. Exactly what he'd do for you. And Jesus didn't stay there, did he? 3 days later, he stood up again. He breathed again. He gained victory over sin and over death. It means that your sins really will be forgiven if you trust him. It really means that you will have life with him forever if you trust him. And the fact that he rose again from the dead is so important, because it means that because he's alive, he can bring you to his Father. He can bring you into the family. He's the only one who can get you in to be free forever. Jesus says, if the Son has set you free, you are free indeed. And the converse is true. If the Son has not set you free, you're not free. You're not free now, nor will you be free for eternity. So my question tonight is, will you come to Jesus? Will you come and be set free? Again, final comment from a couple of slides. But Warren mentioned how we're all in this rat race. We're all just busy scurrying along in life, trying to kind of grab and claw and trying to get our way up in life. And we push other people out of the way. We trample on people. We push God out of the way. But it's a horrible way to live. And God wants us to step out of that rat race and come into his grace, which is his free gift of Jesus and forgiveness and family life of him forever. So do you want him? Do you want Jesus as Lord of your life? Do you want his forgiveness? Do you want the Holy Spirit to come and change you from the inside out? Then come to Jesus. The final thing I wanted to say was this. There's a great verse as John starts writing his biography where he says really and truly what happens when you come to Jesus. Let me read those words. He says this, but to all who did receive Jesus, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. No one else can give you that right. No one else can bring you in. Only Jesus can. So will you come to him? I'm going to pray as I have done on other evenings. And it's going to be an opportunity for you just to say sorry for your sin. And an opportunity to thank Jesus for what he's done. And to say, Lord, will you please come into my life? And please will I now receive the Holy Spirit? That's just pretty huge, absolutely massive. And it might be a big decision that some of you are thinking, actually, I need to go away and chew this over a bit more. Then do that. But don't delay. Don't delay too long. And for others of you, realizing that tonight, now is the moment I need to do that. So why not pray? I'm going to pray a prayer. And if you agree with it, if you actually want Jesus to come in, then say amen in your heart or out loud, which means I agree. Let's pray. Dear God, I realize tonight that what Jesus says is true. I am a slave to sin. It cripples me. It masters me. And my life's a mess because I've put me at the center instead of Jesus. But I want to thank you tonight that you love me so much, that you gave me your only son, Jesus, to come and pay the price for my sin, the price to set me free, so that I could live in his resurrection life and power. Please now, Lord, will you forgive me? Please now, will you give me Jesus as my Lord and the Holy Spirit to live inside me and to transform me from the inside out. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If you prayed that, each night I'm giving away these little funky little booklets. So that's massive if you have. You just come to know the God of the universe. That's pretty huge, as in nothing gets bigger. So come and talk to someone. Let you know, so you don't have to talk to me, but talk to someone who's a Christian. Let them know, and they will help you to know what it is now to walk with Jesus. But I've got these little booklets also which can help you with that. So feel free to come and chat to me, or chat to Warren, chat to someone you know is a Christian, and they'd love to help you. Thank you so much, David.